Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to our latest Bristol Life Business Surgery, this time with Triangle Networks. And I hope this finds you at least reasonably well, pandemics and everything else notwithstanding. So here we are in Tier 3, which has, fingers crossed, all the signs of being Tier 2 reasonably shortly. Unless there's an unwelcome swerve, and after this year, none of us can predict whether or not there will or won't be that. But whatever, we will figure out a way of getting on with it, whatever this world is throwing at us. It's been so cheering how so many businesses in Bristol, individuals in Bristol, have responded with such vigor, such ingenuity, such determination to get through these times, and also to be planning their years ahead in 2021. As ever, Bristol, we salute you for your response to these times. So my name is Greg, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to this latest business surgery. We aim to give guidance on key sectors via leading experts in their field. Today, Triangle, talking about connectivity, about the changes wrought to businesses and the opportunity for businesses going forwards. We'll shortly be talking with Paul Anslow, Bob Irwin and Jamie Butt. I'll be interviewing them on your behalf, and please do ask questions via the button at the bottom of your screens. You can be anonymous as name or named as wished. And I think we actually have a live question with any luck today as well about, well, I'll save that. You'll see what it's about. Today's session is being recorded as ever and will be shortly available on YouTube. The truth is, in these times, we can all do with help figuring out our response to running companies, where many of our core assumptions about business have been stress tested like never before. Before we get going this morning, some updates for you. Firstly, we want to give a proper shout out to all who have supported Bristol Life this year, but particularly since we returned in September. Whether it's editorially with your stories, your inspiring illustrations of what is happening in Bristol, whether it's commercially through advertising and sponsorship, we are very, very grateful for the support of so many businesses and organisations in Bristol. You help us celebrate Bristol and its infinite excellence by the support that you give. And we hope that we also help you generate business, because we can all do with that in current times, I would have thought. And likewise, from business, the employment which underpins the city's vitality. Few parish notices of stuff coming up. The Bristol Life Business Clubs and Surgeries. Please look out for our next Bristol Life Business Club. It's about charities and at Christmas, which is next Wednesday, the 16th of December at 11 a.m. Charities, like all sectors, but probably worse than any other, have had the most torrid time, the time at which they most need to be providing their services and support for those who most need it in our cities, is when they've also been most hit by funding issues, whether it's their retail environments or whether it's their events. So how have our charities responded? What is the role of business? How do we seek to engender a more civic approach to supporting charities in 2021? Look out for that, and please join in with, perhaps not a virtual round of applause, but your support for that event of just showing charities that you connect, you care with what they're endeavouring to do is really important. Please, December the 16th, next Wednesday, 11 a.m. Two Bristol Life Business Surgeries in January. One with Black Star Solutions, the other with Royds Withy King. January, frankly, feels like miles away, so I won't trouble you with the details just yet, but we will give you details by email, social media, and so on. These are surgeries, in other words, a deep dive into a specific business expertise, as we are today doing with Triangle Networks. Two awards on our radar, which are the Bristol Property Awards. And there's been just stellar support for the new model of the awards, now housed inside, snugly inside, the Bristol Property Symposium on February the 12th. Brief headlines, 3 elements: thought leadership, which are plenary sessions, keynotes from national level with national level insights on residential and commercial property; networking, unique sponsor-hosted hubs with structured and randomized networking; and then excellence, the awards themselves celebrating the excellence within the property sector, live presented in a bespoke studio, recorded sponsor inserts and live reveals. It'll be simply the biggest gathering of Bristol pro services companies since lockdown. So please talk to us about how you might be involved. There will also be an exclusive in real life, whatever that is, in real life event in the spring for all sponsors, finalists and delegates. Tickets will go on sale shortly, later this week, and we'll explain how you can interact with the Bristol Property Symposium featuring the awards. Excuse me. Our other awards, the deeply uber glamorous Bristol Life Awards will be on the 22nd of April. It'll be a much needed opportunity to bring Bristol together and celebratorily Bristol as ever previously. The biggest gathering of all types of the city's businesses and organisations, from the coolest of the indies to the largest of the corporates. If you're a brand seeking to rebuild your pipeline, raise your status, signal intent, launch into new areas, you want to be associated, one of the categories, for example, tech and innovation, which is reasonably pertinent to today, is available currently. Or just plain want to show how much the City of Bristol and its organisations and people mean to you, then please do talk to us about sponsorship opportunities. In terms of marketing, I heard our particular approach to marketing described last week as the Lion King strategy, everywhere the light touches. It's true, the awards will be everywhere, basically, and we're absolutely delighted with the support of all those on board. I'll just name check one, which is Marsh Commercial, our headline sponsor. Actually, I'm going to name check another, which is Triangle Networks. They are our subjects today, so it'd be reasonably graceless not to give them a proper nod. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick sip to get rid of this frog. Excuse me. Take two, can't edit that out, this is live. There we go. Nominations have just opened for the Bristol Life Awards, and we're very aware, of course, that this hasn't been the best of years. Nothing like the best of years for many companies, of course. So there may be some reluctance in nominating. Truth is, everyone's in the same storm. It's all about the relative achievements which you, your organisation, have done this year. And also, surely, now's the time to stand up and promote your business and your teams. We'll be running a Bristol Life launch event, a special launch event, earlier in the new year, including our sponsors, all of those who are in place by then. So there's a small hurry up if you fancy it. All of that is to come. Much more immediately, we have today's session on digital transformation and getting match ready as businesses in 2021. Let's ask Paul, Bob and Jamie of Triangle Networks to step forward as I introduce them. I'm going to give a little bit of their bios, so you have a flavour of who they are and what they do. Paul, he says he's a lively and enthusiastic evangelist. You're an evangelist. That's well, we should hear some evangelizing this morning, I'm sure. Evangelist specifically for fibre internet. He's heavily involved with lots of skills and digital focused initiatives across the west of England, as well as ensuring that Triangle has a lasting impact on the sector and the business community in and around Bristol. Paul led Triangle 5 years ago into the then completely unknown world of alternative networks. We try and find out a bit about that. Triangle is now a major force in the building of demand for gigabit connectivity across the UK. Bob, or some know him as Mr. Bob, Bob Irwin, the disruptive force. Well, up to a point be disruptive this morning, Bob. Your shout on that one. Sales Director of Triangle, helping raise the profile of full fibre internet across the UK, putting much needed pressure on providers and stakeholders to deliver a future-proofed infrastructure for businesses and homes. Jamie Butt, good morning, Senior Partner Manager. Jamie's role involves working with IT professionals to deliver connectivity for businesses in the west of England as a long-standing and highly experienced member of the Triangle team. By the way, both Bob and Jamie both focus on the growing IT partnership network, but also on a personal basis, both are fundraisers for the Children's Hospice Southwest. So I mentioned earlier about the charity event which we have. There is a fantastic local charity supported directly by these two. Bob has recently been doing 10Ks in 10, and Jamie completed 12 half marathons in 12 months. Crazy and wonderful in equal order. Anyway, right, good morning to you all. How has business been for Triangle in this strangest of years?
Yeah, morning, Greg. Hasn't it been strange? It's I think in equal part it's been totally frightening, particularly to start with, as you know, what would the market look like, and also how our business customers, our friends who run businesses, how are they going to sort of get through these early stages? But I think most people would agree that there's a lot of positivity that's now coming out of it, whether it be the kind of the collective approach that people have started to take with with lots of business elements, I suppose, or maybe from our point of view, there have been some real positives. We've got a strong team. networks are getting easier to build. We're more people are home working, so demand is up, and that means people will invest more. And this the profile of connectivity, particularly alternative networks outside of the incumbent providers, of course, the profile has been raised, the bar has been raised, and expectations have been raised. So,
for those of us who are hard of understanding, could you just explain what alternative networks are?
Yeah, actually, and I'm sure we'll talk about jargon at some point. It's a bit of a problem that we have in our sector. But an alternative network, or we might refer to them as an altnet, to save a little bit of time, is a provider that isn't OpenReach, isn't Virgin really, I would say. But there's an argument to say that they're not as dominant in the marketplace as the incumbent is. So yeah, there are loads of small providers as much as others. I mean, we focus on City Fibre. City Fibre is our core provider, largely because of the coverage across the UK. But there's some great smaller companies doing some brilliant work, particularly in the rural space.
We'll come back to Triangle as a business during this, but talk to us about your clients and how the mood music has changed, perhaps from autumn onwards. What are some of your clients saying about their business prospects?
Well, I suppose the key thing is that people have a little bit more certainty now. We found businesses starting to think about going back to the office. I appreciate that they also want to do things differently. They know that there's that hybrid of home working, which we can talk about. But I think the businesses are feeling positive. We're getting kind of good good sort of noises from a wide variety of businesses to say that actually we're ready to rock and roll in the new year, which is important. Bob's probably a little bit more across this perhaps than I am.
Yeah, I mean, business outlook, obviously back in April when we hit the first lockdown, nobody knew what it entailed, and everybody put the brakes on, and that was across all industries. The importance of connectivity itself, it's always been there, but I think when April came along, everybody's realised exactly, connectivity is the lifeline of any business currently. From October, I mean, it's definitely see more people engaged more. They're definitely looking to take that next step, and rather than people not knowing what is coming up, we're speaking to more people who have more of an understanding of how they need to change their business or want to change their business, getting that digital transformation as a mindset, if you see what I mean.
Could I come back to mindset in a moment? I just want to talk about this transformation point that, to the extent these times have been a catalyst for change in business. Could you perhaps any of you give an example where a company has accelerated their thinking or has come to a new place as a result of this pandemic?
Just throwing in the retail sector, and we talked about this in a previous video call, but the retail sector has suddenly been thrust into this world where they've got to change. Right at the beginning, one of the conversations I'd had locally was look, let's give you some support, because the IT companies are available and are doing pretty well. We've got a good sort of group of IT partners who really want to help those businesses to be prepared for not just lockdown, but the future, right? The future sort of requirement to transform their businesses digitally. And I think they sort of sat up and sort of took notice and thought, okay, well, as Bob said, this mindset idea of actually, well, we didn't really know what this was all about to start with, but they've all been using Zoom, they've all been using Teams, they've all been using all those kind of things. So now it means something, and they actually can, take those words like cloud and, fiber and all those kind of other things, and it means something now. They know that they've got to use digital methods to, grow their reach and all sorts of other things. But I think that is about owning those choices. I think, those businesses have had to say, actually, I can't just say, well, I've got this techie guy or my nephew, my niece or my cousin or whatever is a little bit techie and they're going to help me out. And actually what they end up doing is sorting out the laptop or the PC or something. But digital transformation is really important. If they're going to go in the right direction, they need to be able to say, we're going to accept the fact this is needed and turn towards it, steer the ship in that direction. Once they're there, there's a whole world of things they can do. I think that's a big change.
From business point of view, both you as a commercial company, but for the many companies, of course, to be considering this, how responsive have businesses been to this talk of innovation, if innovation also means investment?
Well, yeah, good question. Good question. I think, yeah, it's difficult, especially when companies are having to furlough staff and whatnot. It's hard for them to say, right, let's take a chunk of cash that we've reserved. It's our safety net, and let's now invest in what is going to be the business that we want to see, especially since measuring the outcomes in a short-term way, that's quite difficult. For a retailer, you can say, I'm going to do more social media, but how do you really know what impact that's having, what impact that's having in the short term? So that investment, that risk is of course there. So no doubt about it. The businesses are still having to say, look, let's put a pause on some of the bigger spending. Let's not invest totally in the future. But they don't necessarily need to be thinking about that huge investment at this stage. One of the things that we want people to do is engage with their IT companies, engage with the technical, support that they have around them, and say, look, what could I do? An e-commerce store for a small retailer as part of a collective in a business improvement district is a perfect example of that collaborative working that probably doesn't cost a huge amount of money, if anything at all, for those businesses, but will make a huge impact, a huge difference when it comes to taking those steps on digital transformation.
And Jamie, have you found this sort of almost duality between we know there's a need stroke opportunity, but now doesn't feel like the time to invest because, as mentioned, hunkering down, furloughing, uncertainty, and so on. How do you respond to that when clients make that type of point?
I think we were all expecting it to be a bit quieter over the sort of lockdown period with the situation that's ongoing at the moment. But to be honest, there's been a lot of businesses looking to sort of implement better connectivity and using this as a time to sort of get ready for the impending sort of return to work. So we've had a lot of requests come through for internet and seeing what's available in certain areas, which is great, which is exactly what we want to see. As I say, businesses using this time to sort of preparing and get ready for the back to the future, if you like, whenever this may be.
Back to the future. That's a strange sort of temporal concept. I guess we're all grappling with. So tell me this: when you speak with clients and you're considering their needs, both those that you're already dealing with, but potentially others, do you think the barrier to sort of seizing this digital transformation, how much of it is lack of knowledge? How much is lack of, yes, the risk of money? How much is actually mindset?
I think, as Paul's mentioned, there's lack of knowledge in internet and the technology sort of side of things. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of jargon, if you like, a lot of phrases and a lot of technology that people may not quite fully understand. I think we're strong believers that if you're a business owner or a decision maker, it's very important to understand sort of types of jargon that comes with internet connections. Not all of it, there is a lot, but certainly one key phrase which you'll hear a lot at the moment is full fibre. And it may sound simple, what is full fibre? Well, full fibre is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a fibre connection that is run from your local telephone exchange or a local point of presence if it's an alternative infrastructure provider, and it's a fibre cable right the way inside the business's premises. So it may sound simple, but that's really important, I think, for business owners to understand. Full fibre connections may also be referred to as sort of ultra fast broadband or ultra fast fibre, even FTTP, which is fibre to the premises. There's another sort of important point is you may also hear a lot about sort of super fast fibre, super fast broadband. Well, actually super fast fibre is not full fibre. there is a long leg of a copper cable that's made up in that connection. The fibre, again, is from the telephone exchange or the local point of presence up to a green cab. So you'll see these green cabs sort of down the end of your streets, maybe serving business parks or trading estates. The last leg from that green cabinet to the business is a copper cable. And this is where your sort of intermittency occurs, the bottleneck in terms of speeds, the reliability. If it rains, your connection is going to be dropping in and out. So although connections may be advertised as super fast fibre, let me assure you, if super fast is in that phrase, it's not a full fibre connection. And you're still likely to have the tendencies that copper broadband products have.
As you probably know, I'm fully capable of asking the world's dumbest questions, but is it the case that that last strand, that copper piece as opposed to fibre, is simply to do with cost? That's why that last bit is in something which has greater problems than fibre.
Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons. Cost is certainly one. Openreach have the majority of the network share throughout the UK, and their network is predominantly copper. Although they are upgrading it in areas to fibre and trying to roll out more fibre, it is a case of Openreach taking away their copper asset and putting fibre in. So cost is certainly an issue, yes.
Well, we'll come back to jargon and the sort of barriers to business that and understanding that can create. I just wondered, a slightly sort of stand back point, how dependent are we on fibre connectivity and how far short are we of a gold standard digital infrastructure? Small question.
Well, the UK itself, a couple of years ago, was only like 4% covered for full fibre connectivity. We're now up to 12%, but we still lag behind most of Europe, in all fairness. There are countries out there, Sweden, example, you've got like 96, 97% full fibre coverage. I mean, the importance for putting this in, it's future-proof, this stuff. It allows for people to do, I know you may hear it all the time, but you can do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. If you want to try something new, if you want to innovate, you can. Why? Because it's already there. You don't need to, worry about, I'm going to press the go button and I'm going to slow the whole office down, because I've pressed that go button because I need to do something. How about you press go and you get straight onto your next activity,
If the political will is there, and there's big caveat there, and if the money is there, probably a yet bigger caveat on that, wind the clock forward. If that percentage was materially higher, what difference would that make to Triangle's business?
I think that's it would be significant if as we've started to sort of creep across the UK, and there are areas we don't need to go to largely because they're quite a long drive to the east side of the UK, or much past about Nottingham, I suppose. But also the opportunity, particularly in the southwest, is it is significant, because what we've got at the moment, the kind of the emerging requirements, the demand coming out of the homes. People are saying now, okay, look, I really need something decent. Then you've got another kind of silo, I suppose, which is the business community saying, look, I need something that's really reliable. Bandwidth is kind of a different issue. But then you've got public sector networks being built. You've got all these kind of things going on. So yeah, I mean, if everyone got together, we have tried this before. Everyone got together and said, right, where are you going to be? What are you going to do? Then it's perfectly feasible that every city in the UK could have at least 95% coverage, with that last 5% being the very, very difficult builds that are very hugely expensive, but those could be, with market failure, could be potentially government funded, rural particularly. But yeah, I mean, it'd be great for us. You know, this is our space, but it's also great for the IT companies who can finally provide decent services to their customers without worrying about, you know, how much, you know, where's the bottleneck going to be. That's a big problem. That's the thing that, talk about evangelism, that's the thing that drives us, is the fact that there's amazing innovation going on, as Bob says, that is right across the UK and in all sorts of different sectors. But we somehow end up being stopped by this conversation of amount of bandwidth. And we should be having those conversations. We should be having conversations about, well, how much do you need? You know, we don't charge people per, you know, cubic centiliter of water, do we, as such, when we obviously got water meters, but we don't say, well, you can only have this amount. You know, you can only, oh no, your house can only have this, because you need water throughout the house, right? And it's and I think in internet we should be doing the same thing. We should be saying, okay, well, there's a usage that you need, but actually, if you need to, you know, have that amount of internet connectivity, then that's what you shall have. It shouldn't. You know, people are fear this kind of up to thing. Actually, we should be bursting to a gigabit every time. So,
in recent times, has connectivity truly improved?
Well,
yeah,
I think I was going to say, I think fiber connectivity's always been there. It's just, has it been within the reach of the majority? So there has always been good internet connectivity. It's just always cost an arm and a leg to do so. Whereas nowadays, with all of the investment which is happening, lots and lots and lots of money are being poured into full fiber networks. I mean, recently you just had the UK government have a voucher scheme, you know, that's just coming to an end, but they're expecting something like for every pound they put in, they're going to get between 12 to 15 pounds back. So you can see the type of investment which is, you know, they can see which is coming. Yeah, we're just in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. The UK's undergoing a massive digital transformation right now, and it's you know, being expedited really by old coronavirus and people needing to adapt pretty much now.
But within that revolution, there are those who are left behind, and arguably more left behind now, more palpably left behind than previously, which is in what is sometimes called digital poverty. Those households that simply lack connectivity, lack, of course, the PCs, smartphones, whatever. Where does that figure on your horizon in terms of, I don't know, the broader social responsibility of businesses? I'm not saying literally for Triangle, but as a slightly broader point.
I mean, on the topic of what's changed, one of the really sort of I think an output of this particular situation we're in has raised the bar when it comes to awareness of digital poverty. I don't think it's necessarily that we know that we can solve it overnight, but certainly from an awareness point of view. And some of the meetings we're in, regional stuff, West of England stuff and whatnot, are centered around this idea of, well, there are three key areas that we need to solve. One is people having equipment for homeschooling, particularly. That's obviously where the big driver is, but also it could be home working. Now, there's a lot of people who are having to, you know, sit on the sofa and try and use a laptop. They can't possibly be as effective as they are if they're sat at, you know, decent desk in a private space with kids running around and whatnot. Then of course it's the connectivity. We'd obviously put that high up there as we might expect. But equally, not having the equipment to use the connectivity and not having the connectivity to use the equipment and come hand in hand. Yeah. But of course, the third thing is education and you know, helping to support people in this idea that, you know, actually you can do this, you can do that, you know, and helping support people use those tools to improve either their business or their home life, whether that be home working life. But that includes. So for me, the big benefit, I suppose, if we can call it that, from a, you know, pandemic, is raising that digital poverty thing that's somehow been kind of shuffled to the side over years, because it just the demand wasn't really there. So, you know, maybe we can feature. Arguably, that's just simply around, if the connectivity is going to be there, somebody's got to pay for it. Right? That's what it comes down to. And
in your conversations at a citywide or even regional level, how much receptivity, or better still, determination is there to do something about that?
Oh, determination's definitely there. The will is there. The issue I have personally is that we have lots of conversations regularly about, what we need to do is sort out connectivity. And it's a bit like, well, look, we've been doing it for 5 years in Bristol now, 5 years in March, I think, next year. We know how to solve the infrastructure problem. What we should be talking about is how much is it going to cost and where we're going to get the money from. I think if we focus on the infrastructure thing, which is really not that complicated, well, I suppose it depends who's looking at it, but it's important that we don't keep going over the conversations about whether the infrastructure is there and how can we get the infrastructure there. It is simply a case of how can we fund it. As for the equipment to use it, I think businesses could really get on board with the idea of supporting with old laptops, old PCs. There's a chap I met recently who will distribute those to the right people, and that don't have that equipment. And a lot of us have got kit lying about, haven't we? We should be going back into the office, looking in the stores, finding all the laptops and PCs and bits and bobs, and sending it over to these guys.
And I'm sure this will be one of the themes we'll pick up in the charity session next week, about, in all different ways, what can businesses do to help support the charity and social needs through Bristol. I want to come on to an area we touched on briefly before, which is about how you communicate your offering as a company. It seems to me that sometimes there's a tendency, the most complex the issue, the more oversimplified the language. Somewhat topically, one might say oven-ready deal, whatever that might be. You're in a world where many of your clients simply will not have the framework and phraseology that you work with daily. These are complex issues in an unknown language. How do you seek to explain your offering in a communicable way?
Well, we work through IT companies. So we're always involving IT companies in conversations with end users who manage to sort of simplify the jargon again onto the end users and sort of allow them to really understand what we're talking about. But I think the message for us is just we want people to register interest and let us know that sort of demand is in a certain area. If internet's poor, if there's only copper-based internet available, let us know where you are. Let us know that you need better internet, and we can deal with the sort of complex conversations, if you like, with the alternative networks providers, and we can work out how to sort of try and get a network extended out to those people, to those businesses.
And I guess one of the issues you face, it's the nature of technology. It is always changing. That technology wears out its own terminology. Even the thing of bandwidth, as you mentioned at the beginning, Paul, is that even a helpful concept because it implies a limitation?
No, I mean absolutely the point. I mean, with other services, people don't just turn it off and say, well, you can't have that thing, right? It's as I was talking about, sort of. It's difficult to find the right analogy, because actually, internet is just one of those things, really. If you've got to be able to use something like a video calling service, and there has to be a minimum bandwidth requirement, then you have to have that bandwidth. You don't actually need a gigabit, but when you do need it, because you're downloading that really critical application, or you want to share a file with somebody who's in the States or something like that, you absolutely have to have that ability to be able to do it very quickly. The concept of a gigabit city for us is it should just be gigabit as standard. Now, that isn't always the easiest thing to achieve, but a gigabit as standard network is where we're going. All other products are just placeholders, really. Now, full fiber, as the guys have said earlier, you can now upgrade it and you can increase that bandwidth because the fiber is there to take it. Now, fiber, is limitless, really. It's just about the equipment on either end that allows you to have an amount of bandwidth. So you should be able to dial it up and dial it up. So that fiber thing is really important. But your point about sort of how these things work in an ecosystem like the Bristol business community or or perhaps public sector is included within that. The key thing is the jargon, that this word fibre. And there was a court case with City Fibre and the Advertising Standards Authority. They wanted to get the point across that you can't use fibre if it's not fibre, not because technically we can't tell the difference if we're in the industry, but actually because the buying public needs to know the difference. Now, as it happens, City Fibre lost that court case, and the Advertising Standards Authority, I believe, suggested that there was the alternative to fibre, or rather, it's not damaging another sector enough. But it is, because and being blunt about it, we all lost that, right? Because if people didn't think they already had fibre, and it's jargon as it is, has a real impact. If they didn't already think they had fibre, they would have demand for fibre. They'd be talking to us, they'd be talking to their IT companies and saying, actually, I'd like to have this better thing because I can make my business better, rather than, oh, no, it's okay, I've already got fibre. I mean, we hear that quite a lot. So, and if the demand was up, then the networks would be built, because the investors would be able to get on board and say, yeah, okay, we'll spend our money because the demand is sufficient that we will pump some money into the UK to build these networks. And if the investors build those networks and then 95% coverage in a city, which is mostly what City Fibre are doing at the minute, then it's not just the business community that gets it. It's not just the home workers that desperately need it. It's everybody. So when they do come to buy that product, whoever the ISP, whether it's us or anybody else they're buying it from, the demand is such that everyone gets connectivity. If then an ISP thinks, well, okay, I'm going to do a sort of discount price for those who are struggling to afford this product, then that in itself is brilliant. But it covers the social care silo, it covers all sorts of other things, healthcare generally, smart city stuff. First of all, we're running our buses using a fibre infrastructure in the UK. It's a critical thing. We can't, and it all comes back for me to that word fibre.
Do you think in retrospect, we, or perhaps more specifically you, might look back on this age as the tech spec era, that much has happened in home computing, as it was then called, in the 80s, of consoles in the 90s. It was about the spec of what the technology could do, as opposed to what the sensation was like, what it enabled. That the focus is on the means rather than the ends. Well, to that point, can you just talk about how, when talking to clients, you differentiate between the process and the tech, but actually the benefit? How much of your conversation is about benefit?
I guess a lot of it, the majority of the conversation is actually finding out what they want, what their needs are, how they see themselves going forward. I mean, internet is the base layer, effectively. It's like you could stick it on Maslow's hierarchy, okay? Without internet, stuff just doesn't happen, depending on the need of what needs to happen, okay? I speak to people who say internet, my business runs on the internet, and yet they have a poor internet connection, which is ultimately affecting everything which they spent thousands of hours bringing a product to market. They spend thousands of hours and money doing marketing, bringing the product up, training people, spending money on CRM systems so they can contact people, invoicing systems, all of these different systems they have all run online. And, sometimes people will see, if that stuff doesn't work, you just don't take any money. Everything has been a waste. You lose value instantly by not being able to do what you want when you want. Yeah.
Okay. So thinking of Triangle as a business as a whole, we're clearly talking in this, whatever it is, 9th month of the pandemic, or God knows what, wherever we're up to. Your business to date, your focus has been very much on B2B, and yet even the very concepts of the tectonic plates of B2B and B2C are just colliding. They've been eroded and changed utterly by working from home. And we'll have a live question on this shortly. So as a business, how do you respond to that read across from what was a B2B offering when actually there's this porous read across into B2C working from home? Paul, what's Triangle doing about it?
Well, I mean, we're sort of going through an interesting time, aren't we, of transition as a business and sort of understanding the kind of the width of this problem and therefore where our opportunity is. And as you say earlier, the opportunity for us in growth is directly related to that. We've been really, really pleased with the way that the IT guys have embraced that customer relationship, something that we wholeheartedly support. And as Bob says, they're really on top of that kind of jargon busting and talking about and sort of helping those customers along. But we do get to a point then when we're really only talking about our understanding of the geography of the UK and in the city we're in, and what can we do to increase this? It's all well and good as saying it, but we need to make some effort to do that as well. So our decision has been to adopt a consumer position with City Fibre. We're one of the very first group of ISPs taking on a consumer connection product, I suppose. And of course, that opportunity is vast at the minute, and whether people do or don't work more from home, but the two are becoming one and the same. Businesses are saying, well, look, why don't we pay for a broadband connection at home for our staff member, because then we get security, we get the quality that we want, rather than relying on them having their kind of cheaper broadband provider. Shouldn't name anyone, but they're cheaper, less quality broadband provider. So our decision has been to pull the two things together and say, look, what can we now do to support our IT partners further? Because there are IT companies who don't just look after businesses, but they look after people in their homes as well, right? So and in that process also look after businesses who have people in their homes right now. And obviously everyone, maybe not everyone, but lots of people are working from home, and we should embrace that. So we are launching a consumer brand in the new year, which will be presented directly on home users, but we're also going to make sure that our IT partners are fully kind of supported in the process of having partner opportunity as well.
And what is that consumer brand called?
It's hot off the press, I suppose. Yeah, we've not even got logos for it, but it's going to be called Fibre Hop. Fibre Hop.
Right.
It represents fibre and the requirement for Wi-Fi thereafter, because when you take on consumer, you don't just take on the connection to the door, you take on the.
Well, there we are. We've had an exclusive. I can try and pretend it's a world exclusive, but it is an exclusive this morning.
It is actually an exclusive, yeah.
Brilliant stuff. I can see you were reluctant to actually say that as well.
I was a little bit. I'm a little bit cautious. I've got in the back of my mind our head of marketing who's saying, "Don't say it, don't say it, don't say it." But no, it's that
little demon was eating you.
We're all going to enjoy our Christmas, and we're all going to get very busy next year. So. Yeah.
Well, let's bring in Jackie Doughty at this point. Jackie runs an excellent film and video business called Walk Tall Media, and she's got a question specifically in this vein about those of us doing that porous thing of working from home and all the vicissitudes that brings. Jackie, good morning.
Oh, good morning. Hello, Greg. Hello, everyone. I've been listening with great interest, actually. I have probably quite a domestic issue, query. I run a production company now based at home. My husband's at home. Suddenly there's been 5 of us, one of whom's a teacher and running classes online as well. And so our broadband took a massive hit this year. I think we got up to a record of about 10, 15 Skype, Zoom and Teams talks in one day, which was pretty good going. But as a result, we took a big hit. I was under the impression we had super fast fibre and we have hubs everywhere, just not up to the job really. So I suppose the question is, my business is changing massively as well. A lot more footage, etc., sent to me to edit online. Bigger files, etc., etc. Presumably, listening to you up to now, full fibre is the way to go. But obviously, with the proviso that it's quite costly, I would have thought, to do that. Do you have any tips, really?
So if I could just take a couple of points there. One, are there workarounds which Jackie and others working from home, the boosters, I'm sure you have them everywhere, but the boosters one might sort of put around houses. And two, as a ballpark, without getting into detail or conflicts of whatever you're going to say subsequently, how much might it cost in a domestic setting to upgrade to full fibre?
So picking up the point about the technical side of it, the fact is the infrastructure that's, and if you are in the Bristol area or even rural too, there are very likely to be an alternative network somewhere nearby.
Right.
The problem is it's quite a time-consuming thing for them to get to ground. If in the case of Bristol, people should really just be, putting their hands up and saying, actually, like you have, Jackie, but in the thousands, because these networks will be built. The problem, I suppose, is unlike yourself coming on and raising that point, people don't often do that. People don't often say, look, I know I'm not in an area that's got fibre, but or proper fibre, I should say, but what is available? Because if you have 10 or 15 neighbours, that cost of 300 quid a month, I suppose, for an Ethernet or a fibre tail to the area, and then some wireless technology that links to that, probably isn't hugely expensive, but it's the will of yourself and your neighbours to club together, because this stuff can only be done based on volume. I do have a bit of positive news to spin out from that, which is, and it's sort of more to do with our FibreHop brand, I suppose, is that there's some new standards coming for from the Facebook Telecom Infrastructure Project. I believe that's from there, but they were definitely involved with it, which is a thing called Telegraph and Wi-Fi 6 and various other things that are, you can actually use, for example, each one of the houses down the street has a box on the side of the wall, and the connectivity doesn't degrade at the level at which it might do with previous versions of Wi-Fi. So you can actually have one person with a connection in, lots of Wi-Fi down the street, and that is something that certainly we'd happily point in the right direction.
Is that up to us to organise a neighbourhood group to approach you, or is it something that you guys do? No.
I mean the problem, I suppose, is the sheer cost of building those kind of groups, and we've found often that we've built a group and then get loads of demand, and then another provider comes in and overbuilds the network, and we never see anything out of it. It's just cost prohibitive, I suppose, to do it. But I think if you if you do build up a collective and you say to all the guys in your street or in your area and say, look, we really need this, those numbers do speak volumes. And whether it's us or whether it's another provider, because we're here to not sell but give ideas. But if you gather together and have make it a Facebook group, or Facebook or WhatsApp or something similar. Just build those kind of things. It doesn't have to be some kind of complex availability checker kind of process. But yeah, just get that sort of like micro community kind of piece together, and then you can go to some of the providers. I mean, if it's Bristol, actually the council of they're very open to those kind of conversations and have their own infrastructure as well. So yeah, there's lots of opportunity, but get people together, raise your hand. That's the two pieces of advice I'd give.
Thank you very much.
I think Bob's raising his hand.
Yeah, exactly, Bob.
I was just going to give a little bit of advice for what you could actually sort of like do now. Obviously, you've got a lot of people using the internet, and you're using it for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Things you could do. I take it you are connected to Wi-Fi on your laptop and everything like that?
Absolutely, yeah. And we've got booster boxes everywhere in every room.
What you could do is any device which doesn't need to be connected to your network, turn the Wi-Fi off, so it only leaves your laptop on there. Because when we talk about bandwidth, we talk about the amount of space you can send data through. Okay, so obviously if you send a large file, you're eating up all of that space, and your video call is fighting for it. Okay, so you send files at different times. Okay, turn your phone off, because you've probably got apps downloading something in the background. I don't know if you've ever been on holiday or heard people who have been on holiday and come back with a mega bill.
Sorry, what holiday?
But they went to Europe, and it's constantly working in the background, and they come back and they get a big old bill from a network because it's just working in the background. There is so much stuff going on we don't even realize. So if you can manage your calls at different times, that would be great. I'd avoid between 4 and 6, because kids come home and the world wakes up.
Exactly.
I would also check your simple checks you can do. Check your telephone socket. Okay, this is just to sort of like create a little bit of stability. Obviously the end game is full fiber is the way to go, but check that your socket has a little filter in. It's a cheap little plastic thing. It costs £3. Okay, that £3 can cause a nightmare. If you have multiple sockets in your house, like I do, I've moved into an old house. There's like 4 sockets in my house. I have to put a filter in every single socket.
Right.
Okay, so it's not just the one which the router is connected to. So turn stuff off, do a quick little health check. There is more. So, and by all means, give us a shout and we can tell you what to go through and what to look at, you know. But just
taking batteries out of the Xbox controller really helped, actually.
It'll help your sanity as well, won't it?
Well, I don't know if it's going to help the sanity because you'll probably get more in the ear. But
Jamie, let's bring in Jamie at this point.
I'm just gonna add on to Paul's points, and in a sort of business sense, in terms of these micro communities, businesses speaking to their neighbours, other companies on business parks, industrial estates. When we've had these micro communities come to us in a business sense, that gives us some power then to speak to these alternative networks providers that we work with, to work out how we are going to extend their existing network to reach the cluster of people that aren't quite on the network sort of as it stands. A lot of people will check what's available on internet availability checkers, and it will return what is available currently. It won't tell you if you're 200, 300 meters away from a city fiber network, for example. So your micro community or your registration of interest to us could be the one that tips it over, and that City Fibre will build. We've got large examples in Bristol, certainly one project that I'm leading at the moment into Barton Hill Trading Estate. So City Fibre building up along Feeder Road over the river. It's about 1 kilometre in total, so it's quite a build for an alternative network provider to do. And it's going to make Barton Hill Trading Estate one of the best connected trading estates in the UK, in Europe. They'll be able to get speeds of a gig just from registering their interest, coming together and just sort of spreading the word. So yeah, just to echo Paul's point, that's really important to us, and that gives us power to then have meaningful conversations with these alternative networks providers on your behalf, to try and get some better connectivity out to you.
Fantastic.
One of the challenges, just a stand-back point for Jackie's business and multiple others, particularly in the creative sector where they're dealing with large file sizes, is precisely because you're not on the traditional sort of business parks, science parks, co-working hubs and so on. It is much more disparate, and maybe there's a separate conversation about how the two networks of Bristol Creative Industries for Bristol and Creative Bath in Bath and the wider area could actually help promote that home working for creatives and the micro lobbying as Paul mentioned. Jackie, for now, thank you very much, and
Thanks, Jackie.
I think it goes across multiple areas, so thank you. We are coming towards the close of this, and Jamie's just touched on Barton Hill. I wonder if you could just talk through almost the, insofar as anything is ever typical, the sort of chronology of a client, what the, I don't know, initial inquiry, diagnostic process, how you actually work. Someone watching us now, what would they expect from the triangle approach?
So in terms of the Barton Hill sort of build out, there's a number of companies on the trading estate that could only get copper internet. There was no fibre, not even any super fast internet. There it was literally just copper internet. So those businesses have spoken to the IT companies that they work with, the guys that put in the routers, the Wi-Fi, the switches, and have obviously said that the internet is just not good enough. So we work with IT companies, and they have subsequently come to us to say, look, is there anything we can do in this area? It was actually a few different IT companies, but because they've all come to us, we've plotted the registration of interest, and we can see a cluster in a certain area. So that then allows us to go back to them and say, look, we can see that there's 3, there's 4 of you in a certain area. City Fibre are willing to build if you'll take one of their products. Are you up for it? And that is what initiates the sort of build out. So it doesn't have to be anything massively complex. All we say is just literally just give us a call, register your interest, say we need better internet. if interest is coming from other IT companies in a certain area, we have all that information. We have it all plotted on maps, so we can then go back and we can see that potentially build out might be possible in a certain area.
I was just gonna follow up on that with Jamie. It's about obviously letting us know on our website there is a checker as well, okay, which will help us create that demand to get to where people need it.
Bob, just to unpack that, so if anyone watching this went on that checker and there were enough people clustered in a relatively small area, and if it was apparent there was a need, you then have the information which can enable you to, in theory, take action. Yeah,
trianglenetworks.co.uk. There is a postcode checker right on there, but it is, Jamie said it, with demand led. We will get internet to where it's needed. All we need is people to engage, and if just checking a postcode, I think it was Jackie said earlier, it may sound a silly question. It's not, because all of this stuff needs to be answered. And if you may think it's silly, but it could actually unlock someone else to ask a different question. It's just get in touch, however it is, website, through the partners, give us a shout, whatever. Just start that conversation, start that dialogue, and we will always look at it.
Okay, so we come to the end of this. It's a couple of stand-back questions, really. One is, looking at your business now and how it's grown, how it's developed in the 5 years. What are your barriers to growth from here? Your inhibitors, if not barriers.
Keep asking very good questions, Greg. This is sorry, I'm trying to avoid the blinding. I'm not going to complain about the weather, by the way, but I am dodging the blinding nature of the sun coming through.
Well, you've bought yourself some time to think there, Paul. So, what are the words of wisdom?
I'm feeling like a politician today. Yeah, look, I mean, the barrier for us is people, it's education, it's people getting on board. The thing is, there is money for the investment that's required. There is money. We just need the demand. So, as the guys have talked about, have an availability checker, and what happens often is people go to an availability checker and say, right, well, it's not available in my area, and think that that's it. So then they have to go and buy something else. And sometimes that purchasing process might happen within the space. So we want to stop that. What we want is come back to the basics and say, look, if it's not available for you right now, that doesn't mean say it's not available to you in a week's time, or or whatever, and actually all we need to do is raise the profile of what we're talking about, raise the profile of the need for full fiber, not fake fiber or part fiber, all the other types of fiber that there are, and actually raise that profile and say, look, if you want it, tell us you're here, or tell your IT company, or or just message, email. We're launching a text messaging. You can text. I mean, whatever way we do it, we just need to gather that demand. And when we gather demand, we can then go and talk to the likes of the local authority. We can talk to the likes of City Fibre, other alternative networks, and we can come back with this is how we think we can build it. This is how much it's going to cost, and then we can have the real conversation about who's going to pay for it.
And I wonder, perhaps trying to avoid the inevitable caveats that it's impossible to tell and who knows and all these variables and so on. But what sort of business do you think Triangle will be in 3 to 5 years' time? Well,
I'd like to think with a business that we always wanted to be and expected to be in this time frame. I hope that's been accelerated by the growing need for connectivity. I think we're very proud of the way we work with the IT companies. It's a really key thing for us, as you might have noticed through this, is that actually we've managed to support loads of businesses by making sure they've got the right support in the right IT companies and the people we work with. We're very proud of our position. For I think it's maybe 2 straight 3 years, we're top provider for City Fibre across the whole of the UK. So that's a big thing for a small company in south of Bristol. We've had some really good successes along the way. But we know we've got a tough time ahead of us. We don't know. The world of business is a bit uncertain, but we know our place. We know what we can do to help those businesses to grow, and hopefully that means that we're 3, 4, 5 times the size. And we have our own internal targets, of course, and they're usually ambitious. And it sits with Bob to, I don't want to point in that way, that's because where Bob is on my screen, but it sits with Bob to achieve those achieve those targets. We probably won't share them too far and wide, but you know, we're very, very ambitious, and we're ambitious because we want to have a lasting impact. We want to look back in 10 years' time and say, not only did we do the right thing, we innovated, you know, and as part of that innovation, we evangelized the stuff that we're talking about, and you know, we helped people to change their mindset. And at the end of that, we ended up with a really robust and growing business. So that's the goal, is to find that space and work with other people. We are people, very much missing being around people, but and that will soon pass, as you say, Greg. You know, and that's what we want to do. We want to grow well in a sustainable and a solid way, and look back and be proud of it.
This time next year, Rodders. This time next year.
Yeah, I think we've heard that line once or twice before. It's very pertinent in current times. Just a couple of things in closing. Paul has written a very thoughtful piece about precisely about the digital transformation, the role of mindset, the need and opportunity for change. We'll link to that in the comms subsequent to this business surgery. But it is time to close, and our thanks today to Paul Anslow, Bob Irwin, and Jamie Butt of Triangle Networks. Thank you to all of you. Thank you very much indeed. We had the closing comments from Paul in a rousing, rallying, evangelical cry for what might be emerging. And I hope you've all found this useful, and perhaps also a prompt to action. A point that came out about the micro clustering and getting together. It's almost like you know, a very old school approach to change. Absolutely starts from bottom up. And if you're watching this and thinking, you know, my bandwidth, if we're still allowed to use that term, is inadequate for purposes, well, club together, rally the troops, as it were, and see if there's a role for Triangle, possibly others, but who knows, but for Triangle to help sort out your problems yourselves. Because in truth, with these sessions are all about trying to find pathways to improvement and better understanding and so on, because we can all do with help in these times. If you have a professional service which will help others, such as Triangle Networks today, and you're seeking to grow business in 2021, who is it? Please talk to us about a Bristol Life business surgery. Look out for our next Bristol Life surgeries in January with Black Star Solutions and also Royds Withy King, and to that special charity at Bristol Life Business Club on Wednesday the 16th, so just a week tomorrow. Best wishes to you all personally and professionally. This has been a Media Clash production, and this has been the Bristol Life Business Surgery with Triangle Networks. Bristol together. Thank you.